Hello everyone, welcome to the 28th webinar in 12D's training webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator here at 12D Solutions. 12D's training webinars showcase common industry challenges, taking a close look at industry best practices and how these can be implemented using 12D model software. The aim of these webinars is to upskill 12D model users and broaden their understanding of the capabilities of 12D model. We run these webinars regularly and record them for posting through our website and on YouTube. The first 27 webinars from this training series, as well as the 26 webinars from our Industry Solutions series, are available on our YouTube channels if you missed those. During this live presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way. We'll put some instructions on the screen. We'll answer as many as possible of those throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll also read out some of your questions to the presenter for his insights if there's time. Today's webinar, 12D Model and the MTF, Part 2, will be presented by Rod Burns, who does 12D training and support at Extra Dimension Solutions. Rod has 18 years of experience in highway and land development, plus various civil infrastructure projects around Australia and the UK. This session follows directly on from the February training webinar, 12D Design Fundamentals, Introduction to the MTF. We'll be covering more of the design features of the Modifiers and Templates File and showing their application in solving real project situations you may encounter. Over to you, Rod.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me back. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lisa just said, today's webinar is basically going to build on the webinar that we covered in the first seminar, which we looked at the introduction, basically the MTF file that designers often use to produce their designs. So just the other design features and the other tools within the MTF file, and just, giving you some real life situations or applications that you might be using these tools for, because there are quite a number of other tools. If you did watch the first webinar, we basically came in and using the modifiers themselves, we inserted a string itself, just a standard string in there to produce some line marking and make a little parking bay in there. So that was just the first one that we did cover. We then went into the modify link, where we then made the tapers and tidied up the little parking bay there. So we covered that in the first webinar. I didn't want to go back over those too much today in any detail, but as I said in the first webinar, this modify link, this command here, is basically the gold one for me. This one is the one that most designers will use probably 80% of the time, to be able to modify the width and the height and the crossfall for their strings. And so, I will use it a couple of times today, but I won't go into any great detail. The first webinar also went into a lot of the other parts of the MTF in terms of the regions and comments. And we used a snippet as well that you'll find on the top level of the modifiers. So again, I don't go in over those. I'm basically just trying to build on the skills that you might already have learnt in the first webinar. So today we're going to come in and have a look at some of these other advanced modifiers. We did do one that is used quite a bit, the modify to a string, where if you do have another string in there, and I'll go over that again. And we also did use one of the deletings for an intersection, and that again was covered in the first webinar. So I'm just going to quickly skip over those. If I get time, I'll show you where they are again, but we don't want to spend too much time rehashing that. They're available online, so you can go back and have a look at that earlier YouTube webinar, training webinar. So I wanted to have a look at the other fixed modifiers. There are a bunch of other tools in here, as you can see, and I thought we'd just basically step through. Yes, there's a lot of other insert options there for you, modifying to, modifying from, how they work, some of the options in there, and then also all those other removes and what they can do for you as well. There are other options in here, the decisions and boxing and trimming. Again, I'm not going to have enough time in the hour to cover everything, so I just thought we'd just build on the skills and keep progressing you through the training here. So that's my plan, to cover most of those modifiers today, give you a bit of an insight how they can be used, and put a project together to sort of cover off those bases. So I'll just quickly skip into 12D, and you can see this is the project I was working on in the first webinar. If you have watched it, this one will follow on, and where I created that parking bay and the bus bay into the situation here. I'm going to come back and have a look at this a little bit later, but I have gone in and actually done a whole bunch of other design to all the other roads and streets here. And I'm basically just trying to use all the different modifiers in one project. So it's not the best engineered project at all, but it does give us a chance to showcase some of the other tools and how you might utilize them. So coming into this middle street up the road here, it's road number 3. I'm just going to come over to the recalc panel, and I want to edit the MTF file. So I'm just going to hit on the edit data here to edit the MTF file for this road. I can pick any of the strings or cross sections that was generated from that function, because up the top of the information panel here, you can see it was actually generated from the function RSO3 for road number 3, and the reference string modifier and the MTF file is opened. Now on the right-hand side of the road, it's pretty straightforward. Again, we went through the aliases in the first webinar and some comments there in the yellow, and we can collapse these regions down. But you can see I've just actually inserted these strings all individually, the lip of the curb invert, the curb top, curb back. So that's just inserted all the strings, created the design surface for myself. But I really wanted to get in and have a look at some of these other insert tools that we have here. So just having a quick look under fixed, insert, there are a number of other tools in here. So just stepping through some of those. The first one I've got here there, it's insert, cross-fall, intersect. Insert, cross-fall, and intersect, and how that works for you. So basically this one can be used. I do get the question quite a lot on the support line, is that, you know, the designers not only want to design their road network, but they also want to grade the locks. So if you do normally do up the design up to the back of the boundary there, sorry, to the front of the boundary or the front fence line, sometimes the users actually want to grade up into the middle of the lots also. So what I can do here is, if I've got a string and I've created one here, you can see it's just a temporary string, a construction strings. I've just draped that onto the survey triangulation, so it's got some vertical geometry as well. I can then use this cross-fall intersect command, close these down, to come in and basically tell 12D, look, I want to create or insert a new string, a BT string here, color, grass, okay. But basically off this external string here, the draped CAD string that I put at the back of the boundary here, I'm going to be able to nominate the 2 crossfalls that I want. So I'm going to grade from the back of the string here up my lot, across my lot here at 1%. So I'll have a positive, a fall of 1% back towards the road carriageway, and then I'm also getting a 10% grade from the back of the lot there. And 12D will calculate where those 2 grades will intersect in space for us. Pretty handy. So I'll just turn that on and show you that that's exactly what we'll get. We'll get a brand new string generated for us. It's inserted this new string. And again, if I string inquire on it, that you can see there, it's the BTR string that it's generated there at the back of the lots there. If we have a look at that in cross section, I'll just push that across here, giving me some room. There we go. And have a look at that in the section view. You can see that's exactly what it's done. It's graded up the hill at 1% from the back of the lot here. It's inserted a brand new string, and it's found where that other string off the back of the boundary is. So it's nominated those 2, and 12D's calculated the horizontal and vertical position of this new BT string for me. It's used quite a bit also by the highway designers, where you might be doing a dual carriageway, northbound and southbound carriageway, and those carriageways would be independent horizontally and vertically, and they're trying to find the depressed median. That's another case where they can actually put the 2 slopes in and get 12D to calculate off the other carriageway where the depressed median would be calculated to, or where the position could be correct. You do have to be a little bit careful in terms of the grades or the crossfalls that you put in here. Obviously, if you put the wrong number in here, you might be thinking, I want to grade down at negative 10%. Well, 12D will still give you an answer. It just might not be the answer that you were really after. So you do have to have a little bit of think about the numbers and things of what you're actually putting in here as the values. I'm grading up at 1%, but grading down at 10% here, it's still going through this draped string here on the screen. So yeah, that would be the grade if we were to have a 10% crossfall through that vertex there, through the draped string. And so 12D's just calculated where those 2 grades would intersect. So you do have to think about the numbers here, and it depends really what answer you're after. Maybe that is the answer you were trying to design. So that's the grade intersect, inserting a brand new string and getting it to intersect those together. The next one I've got in here is, again, it's another insert, fixed insert, and it's the one insert at a string. Where this one can be used for, again, we're going to create a new string, we're going to insert a new string for us, and this one I've called the interface on the right-hand side, but it's at this selected string at an external string. I can get 12D to go and match it horizontally and vertically. So If I put that one in here, process it again and have a look at the cross section, you can see then I've actually created this interface string, another quick string inquire. This interface string here, int on the right hand side, the interface string, and actually that is actually back up to where that drape string was placed onto the ground triangulation. So it forms the final link, I guess, in that cross section and grading it back to the boundary line where the boundary line might want to be. The modify add a string was used quite a lot in one of the other 12D training webinars. You might have seen that Peter delivered or produced for the pavement design for construction. Again, he used that quite a bit for the construction surveyors when they're trying to match an external design. So if you were giving these strings externally and you didn't actually have an MTF, Peter has some tools in there and he goes through those and describes how they can be used to go back and match a design that's come from external sources back into an MTF file. So you can basically reverse engineer a design back into an MTF file so 12D can utilize it also. So that is quite an important one. It's quite a powerful tool, and it does mean that we can go and match horizontally and vertical other strings that have been provided from a surveyor or again from the surveyors, from the designers, either way. So that's add a string. The last one I wanted to show you is another, again, fixed insert or insert around an arc. That's the last one I've got here. It doesn't really make much sense in this application, but I'll show you the tool. Basically inserting a whole bunch of different links here, a whole bunch of different strings, and I've just named the strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 up to 9, as you can see. But we can do them on a true arc. So you can see here with the width and a height, and I've got the radius in there as a negative 0.5% there. So if I again turn this on and process it and then apply that, have a quick look at what it's produced. Off the end of it all, you can see it's produced this arc for me. It's 2 times exaggerated, so I'll just bring it down to 1 time. And you can see all those links have been produced in a perfect arc. Now, obviously, the more strings you produce, the more links you create up the top here, the names you put in there, then the shorter the chord will be between those arcs. But those vertices, those strings are produced exactly on that arc that you want. Again, you have to think about the radiuses and the values you place in here. Obviously, with a positive 0.5%, it's going to be curved to the right. If I go and click this here and make it a negative radius, you can probably guess what it's going to do. Negatives always say to the left. And if I go and have zoom in again, you can see it's now done a curve to the left. So that's what the inserting add an arc will do. It will produce it on a perfect arc, all the vertices that you require. As I said, it doesn't really make much sense to do that in a subdivision, unless you're doing a skateboard ramp or something, probably. But yeah, for tunneling, it's exactly what you want. So that tool was put in for the guys that are creating tunnels using 12D and the MTF modifiers to put the tunnels in. We've got all the tools to do that. So that's just a couple of examples there. I wanted to quickly run through with just the other inserts. I'll just quickly flick back to the PowerPoint. So we've basically covered a lot of the tools in the insert. The very first one I went through, the first webinar, was inserting the full template, where 12D will insert all the strings in the template, the fixed, the final, right through to the final interfacing strings. I will go back and use just the fixed inserting of the template as well, so that any templates you have, you can actually insert just the strings are created in the fixed part of the template. And obviously with that one, you won't get the final interfacing being produced. You just get the strings that you've placed in the fixed part of the template. We've also had a look at the insert, just inserting strings, cross-fall, intersect, add a string, and insert around the arc. That was the last one I just covered off there. The other three I'm not going to actually have time to cover today: insert absolute, insert intersect, and insert cross-fall points. Those ones are used quite a lot also under the fixed part for boxing, for doing subgrade design. And again, they have been covered in the 12D training webinar. If you're interested in having a look at those being utilized, under the 12D training webinar, it's called Layered Subgrade for Construction. And David produced that video, and he goes through how to make up all the subgrade strings and different layers for different pavements, and it basically shows you how those modifiers can be utilized to create, subgrade pavement and solids, essentially, for your quantity calculations and for the construction surveyors there and the designers. So again, I'm not going to cover those ones today, just because they actually are covered in other training webinars that are available to you. I did want to come on then and actually have a look at some of the modify to and modify from options. Again, we did have a look at the to a string option, but there are actually a number of other commands in there. So you can imagine my project's a bit of a hodgepodge because I'm trying to use all these different modifiers and give you examples of how you can use them. So just bear with me with that. But we'll flip back to 12D and I'll start to go through some of these other options in there and where they can be used. So back into 12D, let me just close some of these menus down because it's getting a bit crazy. Basins. All right, so what I thought I'd do with this one was I've created 3 different basins. They've all been designed quite separately, differently, using different tools, but we'll go through them. The first one is actually very simple, and I didn't actually use the apply MTF at all. Available to everybody is the apply a template, where you can just simply tell 12D, look, I just want to run this one template just on the left-hand side, which is the external side here, the outside, and it's basically just going to be battering down to the triangulation. It's a very simple template. On the inside, basically where my alignment string was, I essentially just battered down, and I just used the other tool under design apply, where we use the very simple interface. And this is the final battering that we have in the templates, the final cut fill. Again, I've got the function already set up here. It does the internal based off my alignment string here that I've set up. Is going to batter down at the slope, so I've nominated down until it finds the survey tin. And you'll notice that it'll come down, and you can see where it's actually finding the ground there. And you will notice that it actually is looping, that the string actually crosses over each other and doesn't give me the best result. Now, typically when you do use one of these design apply interface commands, the tick box is already on down the bottom here to remove the loop. So again, it's set up to work for you automatically, that if the string actually does cross over itself, and will give you some sort of strange answers in the results there for the design, it will already be ticked on. So the interface will look slightly different, or a lot different, and you'll be getting results like that. So it actually will find the intersection there and will chop off the loop itself and not be producing any of a problem there. So that's just the very simple basin, how it can be formed without actually any MTF files at all. This one I went on, basin 2, and went on a little bit further, and basically very quickly created a, oops, didn't want that one. Very quickly went on and created a plane. You can see there a CAD string again, which I produced, and just string inquire on that one. It's just a construction string, and I actually graded that string, so it actually got a 1% fall on it. So I did spend a bit of time getting the basin, and I'm going to use that as the floor of the basin. So I've got a tin in here that I've created. That's tin basin number 2. It's the floor of the basin, and you can see there that's been triangulated up. So it's just essentially the 4 corners. I've just graded the corners using some of the super alignment grading tools, and form the bottom of the basin there. So now that I've got that, I can then come in, and I've got that to work with, that I can use that to a tin. So again, in terms of the modifiers on the left-hand side, it's a very simple. I've just got that same template that I ran on the basin number 1. So the left-hand side, or the external, is pretty simple. The inside, again, I've inserted the template, but now I want 12D to do, and again, the template's actually quite a simple template. All my design's actually quite simply set up. Internally, I've got one string. I just put a nominal width. I didn't really know how wide did it need to be, but the crossfall is the crossfall. I wanted 1 in 4 crossfall definitely to be the slope on the inside of my basin. So the crossfall is really the answer, the key that I was after, and you can see I'm creating this bottom of bank string here. So now I want 12D to come in, and with the modifiers that we have, the options we've got on here under fixed 2, modify 2, I'm going to get 12D to go to the tin. And you can see the command is there, link to the tin. So I actually nominate again my bottom of bank string that I've got in here. There you can see, and I get 12D to go down, or basically lock in, change the width, but hold the crossfall until it actually finds the floor of the basin. So if I apply that, you can see the slopes, then basically the width has changed, but that slope has been maintained until it's gone down and it's actually hit this tin, this false plane that I've set up. So you can nominate what tin it is that you wish to use. It doesn't actually have to always be the survey tin that you basically go and change your width or your height or your crossfall to. It'll go and find that answer for you and give you a new result. And now you also know that the bottom of the basin has a fall down, and you can control the low point of where the basin is. So that's that sort of idea where you can fix a string and lock it to go and widen or take the height off that triangulation that you might have set up. So that's that to a tin option. The last one I did, again, slightly different, another option that is used quite a bit in our training, and we get a lot of calls about, is the drainage guys really like this one, is the fact that, again, the external of this basin is the same. It's very simple, but internally on the inside of the basin, I actually want to link the tin to a specific RL. So we're not really sure how deep this tin needs to be. I don't want a tin. I actually want 12D to go and do the same thing. This option here is under fixed insert, fixed modify to, not to a tin, but to an actual RL itself. And this is where I get to nominate what the level, the bottom level of the RL is there of my basin. So here I'm nominating the same string, the bottom of bank string, but I'm telling it to go to an RL of 17. So I basically quickly run that one. And you can see the bottom of bank string now gets widened. The width has changed, but the crossfall is held again. So I've just put that 1 meter width in there because I didn't really know how wide it needed it to be. But the crossfall is the key one, the 1 in 4%, 25%, negative 25% crossfall or slope there, that I wanted it to be maintained as it went down till it hits that RL of 17. Now, that's quite a handy thing to do. You will notice that, again, our string has looped over itself. It's crossed over itself and it's a bit of a mess. It's not really the answer we were after. But one of the modifier choices that we do have coming back under the MTF file over here, under more, a couple other options we have in here. There's one in here where we can actually remove the loops. Now 12D doesn't know what strings you have in your template or your snippet for that matter. So it doesn't know what strings to remove out of the loop. So you can either type the name of the string in, obviously BB star if you have lots of them, and that will obviously work. If I apply that and recalculate, you can see how those loops have been removed. The other option you have, if you just think every string's going to be a problem possibly, you could actually just put a star in there. So if 12D finds that any strings in your template or again your snippet cross over each other and they start to form some loops, we can remove those automatically, and that will also work. So the wildcard, the star there, ship date will basically set that as a setting as well. That one's under more and your loop removal as part of the MTF process. So you can see how that's worked. Yeah, so again, if you decide that's your level, that might be quite good. The drainage guys often will come in and then we'll possibly work out what the volume is. There's an exact, and they can then calculate what the storage calculation would be of the basin. If it's not enough, it's quite easy then. They need some more storage. They can quite quickly come in and just change the bottom of the basin. They can just put a lower level in, run apply again, and obviously it just comes in at that slope. Those slopes are maintained, and the bottom of the basin is formed up flat at 16.5, an RL of 16.5 there. So that's how linking to the RL to a vertical height, 12D is able to modify that string, either modify the height, crossfall, slope, and lock it in at the RL that you nominate is important to you. So again, that one is quite useful. The cross sections can be quite a bit of a problem. You can see 12D, again, because of the complexity of the cross sections, can't always work out where they're looping over and causing issues. If you have created the basin, well, a tin, as part of the process, let me just close all that down. You know, when I'm recalculating all this, you can see I'm actually making a basin tin as well. So if I turn that on and show you that, it'll be here as well, basin 3. Yeah, it's got a bit of an issue there, obviously, because all the cross sections. So the tins that are generated through the apply MTF function will calculate off the strings and the cross sections. So what we suggest to people, what they might want to do is just stop it from being produced, or once it is running, just turn it off there so it's not actually reapplying the triangulation each time you're recalculating everything. And then just come under the tins, edit the tin quickly, find our basin 3 tin in here, and you'll see how it's got the design strings, obviously, but the cross sections we don't want anymore. So I'm just going to take that out of the data. So it's only going to be based off the strings themselves. And you can see it's getting a lot nicer. Now, because obviously the top of the basin's all the same level across the top, it's almost like a 2-dimensional string, we really need to come back. It's like a contour line. We need to come back and tick on the remove bubbles. And that will essentially remove the bubbles, and you can see it's looking a lot nicer. Turn the edges off, and all the contours are being formed correctly around the whole basin there to form the bottom of the basin. So yeah, just a couple of things to keep in mind with the basins, and that shows you how you can modify to an RL. So we've looked at to a string before, we looked at to a tin and to an RL. I'm going to go to another road and just have a quick look at this by two strings option, and also the option here from a link, where we can get an answer from another link. Now the difference between the two, from to, and how that works is often this is when you're modifying your strings to something else, whether it's to an external string or to a tin that's external or to an RL that you provide, or by two strings. They're all sort of external things. The from answers are usually from your own design. So absolutely, or from a link in terms of your own design. So that's where the menus are sort of matched up and how they are utilized within 12D, and they've sort of tried to group them together. So is it to something which is external, or from something as part of your design? So let's go in and have a look at a couple of these other ones. So we're finished with the basins. That's looking all right. I'm going to come over to this road here. And I'm going to treat this more like a brownfield site, essentially as an existing road, if you can imagine that scenario. And you might have got in a survey and it's given you an existing centre line, and the survey's also giving you an edge of pavement on the left and an edge of pavement on the right. Often this is what the local councils or local authorities will be provided with when they come with the 12D project. They're trying to design something on top of that. It's got a brownfield site, and they just literally have to match into the design. They don't actually have the greenfield scenario, and they're not getting that flexibility. So I've already run the design, so I'm just going to come in here and have again look at the MTF file. On the MTF file, I've run just some standard snippets, so I actually do have some road shape to start with, and an interface one there. So we'll just quickly profile that. One of these cross sections here, get that up there. And you can see that, go back to 2 times exaggeration. And what you can see, hopefully you can see, maybe it's not the best cross section to look at. We'll come back into another one here, turn the tin off for a second. Yeah, so you can see the cyan strings that I was showing you in plan before, that I've got the existing centre line that the surveyor's provided to me. I've got an existing edge of pavement on the left, and I've got an existing pavement on the right. And yeah, the surveyor might have provided a tin, or it's got a triangulation there just so you can see it. So at the moment, my design on the left, it's just a standard answer out of the snippet itself. So I've got, 3.5 metre lane with 3% crossfall, and I've got all the other verge strings that have been generated after that. But quite often with a brownfield site, or if you're trying to do an overlay, you actually want to get the existing crossfall and match it. And that's where this option is quite useful. And the sort of scenario where this one might come into play is under fixed, modify to, by 2 strings. So what it's really trying to elaborate is basically saying you're going to take 2 existing strings, and using those 2 strings, by those 2 strings, I can calculate either the existing crossfall, the existing widths, or the existing heights, measure those 2 answers, measure those answers off those 2 strings, and then provide it to my design. So you can see here, I've already filled this one out, but my link that I'm going to modify is the yellow one there, the lip of the curve. So I want to change my design so it's not -3% anymore. That's just a standard answer. But by basing in here, selecting these 2 strings, so that the surveyed center line that is there, the CL string there, and this external string, the edge of pavement on the left, I can then nominate 12D to find the crossfall between those 2 original strings, and then get my curved lip line to match that crossfall exactly. Now you will notice under the 2, once I've put those 2 strings in, and I do tend to work from the center line out, is that with the side to search number 1, I've actually asked 12D to search both sides, both the left and the right. And that's because, again, if we have a quick look at some of the cross sections here, come back a couple. I was right at the start, there we go. We come back a couple here. Sometimes the center string that the surveyor's provided to you might be on the left side, which it is at the moment, but then as it goes down the road, you might actually find that that center line actually crosses over your center line, and then it becomes on the right-hand side. So the first one I've said to nominate to 12D, look, the surveyed string, the center line actually might be on both sides, so you need to check on both sides of the road of my true geometry, where this second string, the edge of the pavement, is definitely on the left side of my center line. So I know that that's basically the defaulted answer in there to the left side. So just a couple of things to be aware of there in terms of the side to search links up to which side is this string going to be on. And usually, again, if you start from the center line working out, it's usually the first one. It could waver as it goes down. It might cross from the left to the right in terms of the cross sections. So if I apply that, and we just have a look at one of the cross sections there, you'll notice now that the crossfall is not -3%, it's 3.247, and that's what 12D's measured between those two strings at that chainage. If I go to the next cross section, you'll notice that it's now 3.4. If I go again, now it's 4%. So as that original road, the existing road that the surveyor's provided to you, it might be changing crossfall all the time. So 12D will go and match that crossfall for you perfectly each time. And so yeah, modifying the crossfall, but I'm still holding the width. The width is still 3.5 there, so you can see that's the option, the modifier type that I picked there. If you do want to have the width matched as well, that is an option. You can just fill it out and actually say, now, yes, I now want to modify the width. And again, 12D would measure the existing width between those two strings at this crossfall, at this cross section, and then go and apply that answer to my curb lip on the left. So I won't be having a 3.5 answer anymore. 12D will calculate what the answer needs to be. So that at this change, it's 3.54. Again, it's 3.538. So it keeps changing every cross section down the road. It's getting measured independently, and that new answer is being applied to your design. So yeah, that's quite a good tool if you're trying to match an existing design. That's the left side. The right side, set up again, a lot of questions we get asked by designers and local council authorities. We're basically putting a road in, they put a standard snippet in, standard dimensions and things like that, but they aren't going to construct the whole thing. They only want to construct maybe sort of from 300 or 500 mils back in from the existing edge here, and they're just going to build the lip of the curb out to the footpath and just amend this side of the road and update the curb and gutter. So how do we put a cutback line in? Well, it's quite easy. If we just put the normal inserting a string in, again, it would insert it from the center line, and it's going to put it before the lip of the curb. So I'm actually putting in another lane, essentially. If I run this, you'll actually see what I end up with is actually two lanes. First of all, there's my cutback string at 3%. Whoops, get that out of the way. Cutback string at 3%, and there's my lip of the curb all the way over there. So yeah, I've basically now got a 2-lane road, possibly not what you're after. Maybe it is, I'm not sure. But I can then come back and actually modify and just have a different width in here. So I could have just like an extra 0.5 meter that I want in there. So I'll profile that. So now I've changed the width of the lane here just to be 0.5, and that will be the distance essentially to the cut back line that I've generated in there. So I've then gone in here and said, all right, let's modify to a string. We looked at this again in the first webinar, and this is what I want 12D to do, is under fixed to the string, modify fixed to a string. Actually, I want the cutback string to line up exactly with the edge of the curve, because it doesn't at the moment. And I basically am going to use that string that the surveyor provided me, the edge of the pavement on the right, as the edge line. So I'm basically getting 12D to just widen out so I find exactly that key point there, and my cutback line is in line with that. So I'll process that, redraw it, and you can see that now the cutback line is exactly on top of the surveyed string. I've then come in here and said, all right, what I want to do is I want to take the crossfall. We've looked at this one before, modified by 2 links. So I'm going to find again the crossfall from the center line out to the edge of the pavement on the right this time, and I'm going to get 12D to match the crossfall between those 2 strings. Brilliant, no problems, both sides for the center line, or the existing center line, and the right side for the edge of the pavement. I turn that one on and apply it, and you'll notice that 12D will again go and match the cross section or the crossfall that we have off the original road, and we're basically lying on straight on top of it. Now we come to basically my favorite command, the modify link, because I actually want to step everything back in to where the cut line needs to be. There's probably a couple of different ways you can approach this. This is just one technique, but basically using the modify link, we didn't look at this before, so I wanted to cover off it again. So yeah, if I turn this one on, I'm going to basically take 0.5 meter off the current width. So the current width is 3.4. That keeps changing, but it is exactly over the top of the existing lip line, and I'm going to come in back 0.5 meter from that cut point. So basically, if I apply that, quick redraw, and you can see there, it's done exactly that. And because it's obviously 0.5 meter, now the lip of the curb is exactly in the right spot, and you have your cut line in exactly the right crossfall and in the right position. The only problem is our answer for the lip of the curb is still the old answer out of the original snippet. So how do we fix that? There's probably 2 ways you can do it, but I do want to show you the other command in here, fixed modify from a link. So this is where I want to get an answer from my design, from another link in my design, and then apply it to my own cross-section. So it's from an internal calculation almost. So the link I want to change is the lip of the curb, KLR, curb lip on the right there. And I'm basically wanting to take not the width, but obviously the crossfall. I'm going to hold the width because I'm happy with where the position of the width is, but I want to change the crossfall. And I want to take the crossfall from this link that's from the center line out to the actual cutback line there, the cut line there. So I want this answer, the 3.3, to be replicated in this little section here so that we have to maintain the same cross-section, sorry, the same crossfall throughout the whole cross-section. So I'll apply that. Step back, and you can see I've got 3.688, and I've also got 3.688. So it's actually replicated the crossfall answer here into another, also this answer is getting it from another link, another part of your cross-section. So you can start to do some fairly weird things, but you don't actually always have to go forwards. You can take the crossfall from anywhere. I could actually take the crossfall from the pavement or the footpath here. So where I've got a 2% answer here, or the footpath, I could actually generate my lip of the curb to take an answer off another part of my cross-section. So you can see it's going up at 2% now, because I've taken this answer, I'm modifying this string, but taking the answer from another part, or another link of my design, from a link. And that's what that one's used for. I don't know whether it's used that often. It is a tool in there to be utilized if you want. If I was doing this as a project, I'd probably do where we found the crossfalls before. I'd probably put both strings in here, so you don't actually have to do the modification just to one link because of the little S there in the brackets. Just keep an eye out for that on the modifiers. You can actually do the modification to multiple strings. So in this one again, I'm taking the 2 answers, the string crossfall from the 2 original surveyed strings, and I'm applying it to my designed cutback line, cross-section, crossfall, and also the lip of the curb there. So if I apply that, I can do the 2, kill the 2 birds with the 1 command, and that's exactly what I've got. So I've got 2.9% there, and again 2.9% there, and they're both matching the existing crossfall that was picked up in the design. So that's done a couple more of the commands for us. Let's have a quick look back. What have we covered so far? To a tin, to an RL, by 2 strings, from a link. We've still got a couple of extra ones to go. I want to go and have a look at the parallel link and parallel string. And then we'll have a look at the 2 heights, how that one works, and also the absolute. So we've still got a couple of commands to go. We'll kick back into 12D. So I've set up another road with a whole bunch of other edits going on. You can see here another bus bay that I've sort of created in there. And again, I'm using this modify to a string. So if you do have an external string there, a construction string, I can say to 12D, look, I want to widen out and use that as a position. And 12D will no problem, it will widen out the lip of the curb, it'll change the width there, maintain the crossfall out until it finds that string. And we did cover that one in the first webinar. But the one thing you will notice with that and placing that in there is that, again, this came back from basically users asking for this, is that the problem that we have is that if you actually looked at the footpath itself, look at the footpath in any detail, basically when you measured across the crossfall there, we are getting a width of sort of 1.5 meters, exactly the right width we wanted for our footpath, because it's coming perpendicular off the center line. But when you get into the areas where you're in a taper, you'll actually notice that it's no longer perpendicular. The strings aren't running perpendicular. So there is some loss in terms of the width of the footpath. So this is where you've got the option, if you want to, we can actually make the strings or the cross sections work out and come perpendicular to another string. And that's where this one's quite often used, parallel to a string. So there's two options, fixed, modify from. You've got parallel to a string if that string is external, or parallel to a link. And that is if you actually had put your design together, like I did with this first one here, put the transitions in, but obviously the foot path's not the right width here, but there's no other string here. So this one was produced, you'd have to use the parallel from its own link, so that the cross sections would come up and go perpendicular to the actual link itself. Because I do have the string in this situation, I've got that bus-based string drawn, I can use this one. And if you're looking at it, you probably hardly even notice any change in plan. It's changed it very slightly, but 12D's gone through and calculated. The cross sections have come up, hit the string, and I've told every string basically between the curved lip on the left, on the right there, right out to the edge of the verge there, the EV string out there, basically all the strings in between, I want to be calculated off perpendicular or normal to that string. So if I come in and quickly measure the answer here, down here you can see we had that 1.5, and as we come into the verge, into the taper itself, it's maintaining that 1.5 answer across that taper. So it's maintaining the width that you asked for in the original template and holding that width correct. You will have to be a little bit mindful of the cross sections you generate through this section of the taper, because obviously on the drawings, perpendicular to the cross section now, the width is obviously going to be longer, but it is holding the perpendicular or normal distance that you asked for in your template or your snippets, and holding the correct shape and width parallel to that string. So that's where we see that one being used a lot. To two heights, I wanted to come and have a look at that one, and I thought the best way to show that was using sort of a little swale I had in here. Now, inserted a template, I showed you that before, but you can also insert just the fixed part of the template. I sort of quickly covered that one. So in this job, again, I've got a very simple little template, just a swale, essentially, a couple of strings in here. And so as part of my road design, obviously I've created the design surface. I'm just going to insert this, basically this table drain, just through a certain, just through a certain section of my design. I don't want it everywhere to be generated. And I can actually just nominate these strings be basically produced automatically into my road cross section. So you can actually merge the templates together, have a different combination of templates, and just insert the fixed strings to create the shape for you quite quickly and easily. That's what I did to get it started. And I'll quickly show you what it looks like. Bring up a long section view, and you'll see here, just try and position the view so we can see everything. Bring that onto the front. Here we go. So I can keep recalculating and show you this pretty cool command in here. So I've got that one in there. Now you'll notice that this front of the drain there, in terms of the swale that I put in, you can see that's the grey that it's got currently produced off the road design, because it is actually just mirroring the road design. I'm not doing anything else. It's basically that's the longitudinal grade of the road. But you might want to, and this is where this command is used quite a bit, want to nominate different heights for the road. So I'll just show you where that command is. It's under fixed, modify to, and it's the to heights. It's often used for doing this sort of work, where you're wanting to change the grade, the longitudinal grade of a string, and its position horizontally as well, but it might be independently graded from the center line. So you want to not follow the center line grading for whatever case, and drain these like swales or benches out, especially if you're doing big earthworks. For highway designs, again, this is the one you might want to use to grade these strings independent of the center lines. So how does it work? Well, there's lots of options. You just have to tell 12D the string that you are after. And you can see here what I've actually done is just hard coded in an RL itself, again, 17.5. So whatever the answer was out of the templates, what's being produced at the moment, I'm saying just throw that other answer away. I'm not interested in that. My 17.5 is the answer I want, and I can apply that straight in. And 12D will do exactly that. 12D will lock that RL height in for me. And you can see what I've done is I've by changing the height, but I'm keeping the crossfall, it's actually pushed it out a little bit further in plan, but it actually has locked that height in exactly. Now, there are a lot of options in here, and this is quite a good tool because we don't actually have to nominate just one RL. I could say, let's use 2 RLs. I could go from 17.5 at the start, and I could say, let's grade it up the hill to 18 at the end. And obviously 12D will then do the adjustment and make it grade up the hill so that by the end change, it will be the height of RL 18, completely independent of what the centerline's doing, or possibly make it go down the hill. So you have got the nominated choice. You can basically, whatever levels you want, 12D will then grade it. And you can see here, as it's getting deeper in plan, it's actually just maintaining the slope out. But that string is grading exactly in a straight line down to a height of 16 at the end. So where we see this one being used a lot is where, 12D users will know the grades that they want. And you can actually start to use some of these other positions and things here. You can use the position grade, saying that I'm happy with the position that 12D came up with originally. So if I just run this command, so it's back to the standard design without anything, I'm happy with where the drain's starting there, but I want to grade it out at 0.5%. So I don't want it to grade the swale to come up with the road design. I want it to continue to drain out, so it'll go out to my low point, and I can control it a little bit better. So I can take that current position that I have at the start, and I'm going to grade it out and grade it down the hill at 0.5%, which is my minimum drainage requirements. And I apply that. And as I said, this is a very cool tool. It's doing a lot of work for you. The maths in the background must be insane because it is actually giving you exactly the grade you ask for. And you can see as it gets deeper, the string actually starts to widen out as well. So it's doing the horizontal and the vertical grading for you all in one step. It's doing a lot of calculations for you and makes life a lot easier than I guess the old commands we had to do. We had to work a lot harder to get it. So that one is by 2 heights, or by 2 heights that you define, you actually are able to independently grade basically whatever you like. It's quite a cool tool. The other one I wanted to show you in here is the absolute option. So under fixed, I think we've looked at all these ones here now, tour strings by the RLs and all those. From here, we looked at the parallels and from a link. The only one I haven't checked out yet is the absolute, and that's where it is under fixed, modify from absolute. Absolutely, I usually think of, you're the boss, you absolutely know what you want it to do. Now, just to show you how it works, I just did use a standard modifying link command. We used this one before, and you can see how my road's curving around here. I've just told 12D, look, between the start of the path and the end of the path, I want this path to be in a straight line. That was the one down here. Look, position to position, I'm happy with the position where it is at the start change here. I'm happy with the position at the end there, but I want the path to go in a straight line. Everyone knows no one walks around the corners. Everyone walks straight across the path there, across the grass. So let's just make it a straight line. So I'm going to run this command, and you'll notice that obviously it will do just that. Between those changes, it's made the path go exactly straight where I asked it to be. But the problem with that is that every other string external of that, including my boundary and the interfacing, it's all moved because the string on the inside of the template or the snippet has been adjusted. So how can we control that a little bit better? That's where the absolute comes in. Because if you absolutely know the answer that you want and you're the boss, don't mess with you, we can actually lock a width in. So what I'm going to do is modify again the link, the verge link here, but based off the hinge. Now this is a bit of a hidden string that you have available under the settings here. 12D creates this hinge string. It's called hinge, and it basically mirrors on top of your center line. We suggest that no one changes that name because everyone then knows what we're talking about, but there's basically a hidden string in there in terms of the hinge string, and we can calculate directly off that. I've lost my cross section. Where have they gone? There we go, get back there. All right. Oh, sorry, my plan view. There we go. So basically what I'm going to do is get 12D. You can actually measure the width as well. So I'm going to say, look, I'm happy with the width over here between the center line, my hinge string out to the existing edge of the verge there. I can just measure a goods section. So I've got 9.03. Okay, that's what the answer is. And I'm going to get 12D to lock that width in. Don't mess with me, just lock that width in and absolutely lock that width in. So yes, as the center line's obviously got the arc in it, this is also forcing that arc, that same geometry onto the edge of the verge, and everything's then paralleled from the center line. But my strings inside have the ability then to change width or change heights, change crossfalls. I'm actually able to absolutely lock strings in so that they don't change, even if the strings on the inside are being manipulated. So that's where the absolute can be used. It's quite a powerful one, and it does make you have ultimate control on lock answers in for your design. So we've covered, again, quite a number of tools. Just quickly step back in here. We've looked at those ones. The other ones I wanted to quickly have a look at, we're running out of time, but I'm trying to move through these quite quickly, is removing strings, and obviously they've also got rename. There's a whole bunch of different remove options in there. So we're going to have a look at most of those. And then obviously you can come to the questions. Sorry, Lisa, I'm getting ahead of myself. So back into 12D, I'll go back and have a look at this on the left-hand side, where I'm doing a whole lot of removing of strings for the intersections. So under fixed, remove. Now, for my mind, the remove and the removed by a name, they basically can be basically the same. The remove one allows you to obviously just place in there one string. We've got the intersection here. It's quite often used for intersections and things like that. But you can just nominate one string in there, and it will remove that one string for you through the intersection. That's no problem. Remove by the name is quite similar, because we can actually have multiple string names in there. See, and you will actually have to give each of the string names for it to be removed, what the change range is in there, and 12D will then go and remove those strings for you, and that will work for you. One of the other options we've got under there, fixed remove, is removed by a number. And this one came in, again, a couple of versions ago to help with your intersection designs. If I can zoom in here. And the way it basically works is that you can come into your modifiers and say, look, I want to remove 6 links from my template or my snippet. Either way, they work the same. And what 12D will go and look at is under your fixed part, it'll go through the 6 strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It'll delete those 6 strings out through the intersection. And that's how that one will work. And it does its job, fantastic. And then we had the support calls, and on the user forum, people were talking about the fact that, well, what happens if I add a new string in there, or I take the footpath out, and then answer 6 then becomes 4. Oh my goodness, the answer is not going to be the correct answer anymore. So the programmer had a bit of a think about it, then went and added in the option, if you want to, the one I've got shown in here for the next intersection, is you can actually remove with a negative number. It's a little bit strange possibly, but the way this one works is the same idea. Instead of actually working from the bottom and working out what the 6 strings are, it actually keeps the top 2 strings. It actually works from the top down. So if you put a negative number in, it'll actually then work from the top, and will keep the right amount of number of strings that you want. So in this case, I'm going to keep those 2 strings, apply that, and I get the same option happening there. You can see it's removed the strings through the intersection there. So that's the way around it. And then again, the users were started talking about on the forum and saying, well, what happens if I add another lane in? And then the -2 number isn't correct anymore. It needs to be -3 and -4 possibly, depends how many strings you're going to add in. And so, yeah, again, the programmers went back, had a bit of a think about it, and they put in that final command, the one that I showed in the first webinar, is remove, and remove just from the name, because often you know what the string name is that you want to go through the intersection to maintain the crossfall through the intersection on your major road. And so basically everything outside that lip of curve on the left, yes, everything outside of that, just wipe out the strings, just to remove those. So then it doesn't matter if you add more strings before it, add more strings after it, it doesn't matter. It's basically based off that string name, and everything will get removed based off that. So that was sort of the last fixture placed in there in terms of removing things, and helps us with all our intersections design. The other thing, while I'm in this little short location, because there is another remove under there, remove, and it's remove absolute. Again, absolutely, you're the boss. Now, typically you probably know when you remove strings, if I was going to go and remove the footpath out, the problem is with taking the footpath out, then every string that gets created after that will actually get moved in, because again, it's going to be generated from the template or your snippet based on a width and a crossfall, and it basically will maintain that number. So the removing has no problem taking out the strings, but it does affect the other strings that follow after that in your design cross-section. So that's where you might think about using the removes absolute. it will do the same thing. It will still remove the footpath, the front of the footpath and the back of the footpath, but it will absolutely keep the other strings in their old location. So you can see this one, it does remove the strings, but the edge of the verge there and the interface string is still maintaining the original position and absolutely locks those sort of positions in place. So it's quite a handy one. Again, if you're doing that sort of scenario with your design. The last one I sort of put in the training in the notes here was under fixed, where we've got renaming. You can see it's basically on the bottom, towards the bottom of the list of the fixed modifiers, because we sort of suggest that users do this right towards the bottom of their modification. So it basically is just to make things look pretty, if nothing else, where we can get a string. In this case, I've just nominated the lip of the curb through the intersection again here. I'm just changing the string name. That's all I'm doing. You can obviously change the color as well, but that new string name now will then get used in the map file and can basically make the drawings look pretty and give us a bit of a line marking pattern or whatever you like across the intersection there. In terms of design, it's not done anything different. It's still in the same horizontal and vertical position. It just makes the drawings and the presentation look a little bit pretty. And that's why it's sort of at the bottom of the modifiers. We sort of suggest that you do that last, because all it is making it look pretty at the end of the day. So thanks for your time this afternoon. We have covered quite a lot of ground in the hour. I'll get back to Lisa now and see if you've got any questions.
Thanks, Rod. We're a little close to time, so I think we'll answer questions by email later. So thank you, everyone who tuned in, and thanks for your questions. Sorry if we didn't get to you live, but we'll certainly answer those by email soon. The recording of this webinar will be available in coming days through our website and our YouTube channel. Our next two confirmed training webinars are Attribute Manipulation on the 6th of September and Tips for Using 12D Model Plot Parameter File Editors on the 19th of October. Do keep an eye on our website for details of those, as well as our upcoming industry solutions topics. We'll also continue to keep you posted through email and social media. If you need to contact us in the meantime, our details are on the screen now. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you for attending. We hope to see you at future webinars.